remember that the prophets looked across mountaintops, and many times they saw events that were just immediately coming, and sometimes they saw events that were the coming of Christ, and sometimes even out to the second coming of Christ or the millennium. And I'm going to put that chart up again just so you can kind of see. I don't know that the prophets understood everything that God was showing them, and I'm not sure they understood anywhere near the timeline, and I'm not sure we do. But there's no doubt about, when you look at the events and the details of the events, that the prophets saw things that were coming, shadowy pictures of what was going to come. And sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's reassuring, and sometimes it's even so, come Lord Jesus. So let's take a look at that little drawing first and make sure you understand this principle of looking at mountaintops. Well, as we've seen before, Zechariah seems to have been able to see not only some current events, things that were actually going on in Judea and in Jerusalem, but he also had a tendency to be able to see ahead to some events of the birth of Christ, the Messiah, and also the second coming of the Messiah, maybe even some details about the Antichrist. Let's take a look at some key words and some key phrases out of chapter 12 and chapter 13 so you can kind of get a flavor for this seeing ahead and seeing just mountaintops. First Zechariah 12:10. I will pour out on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, so that they will look on me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son, and they will weep bitterly over him like the bitter weeping over a firstborn. And then we want to look at chapter 13, 1 and 2. In that day, a fountain will be opened for the house of David, for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and for iniquity. And it will come about in that day, declares the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, and they will no longer be remembered. And I will also remove the prophets and the unclean spirit from the land. And then look with me at verses 8 and 9. And it will come about in the land, declares the Lord, the two parts in it will be cut off and perish, but the third will be left in it. And I will bring the third part through the fire and refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. And they will call on my name, and I will answer them, and I will say, they are my people, and they will say, the Lord is my God. And at first blush, it could appear that this was a prophecy about Jesus and his crucifixion when we talk about the piercing of him and mourning. But when you start to look at the rest of the verses that follow quickly after that, it appears to be after the second coming of Christ and during the days of Revelation and the breaking of the seals, being tested by fire and 1/3 being destroyed. So it's quite possible he saw a little bit of the mountaintop of the crucifixion of Christ and then carried through and saw the second coming of Christ and the final judgment on this earth in the book of Revelation. Nevertheless, we know judgment is coming. We know that a lot of people aren't going to make it, and we know that those that do are going to have to be tested by fire. And the time of the Revelation, the time of the tribulation, is going to be very, very difficult. And so I'm hoping and praying that I'm right when I say that we get raptured out first. Well, I hope that you'll take a look at these verses in chapters 12 and 13. Hope that you'll remember that chart that says look across the mountaintops. And most of all, I hope you'll remember he's coming again. He's going to rule and reign. He's going to judge. And he's going to separate those who believe from those that don't. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.